still remember when the first E3 trailer for Assassin's Creed dropped in 2006. Instantly, the game gripped you with its bleak color tones, medieval settings, and an eagle's cry that goes on to reveal a man in a white hooded robe overseeing an execution. The bell tolls, the man disappears from the tower, only to reappear in the crowd, and all hell breaks loose. He kills the executioner, flees the pursuers, and loses them in a crowd of white-robed monks that camouflage him perfectly. It was badass then, it is badass now, and perhaps one of the few video game trailers that managed to convey all of its gaming mechanics without a single dialogue. But the man in that trailer would soon outgrow his youth's arrogant and brash badassery to become one of the most respected and feared assassins of all time. Most Assassin's Creed fans find their ways to fault the protagonist in each new game, and usually that is justified, especially Origins onwards. But over the 15-year lifespan of this stealth action franchise, if there is one universally respected character, that is Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad, the man who remade the Assassins into the lasting force they are today, whose blueprint on the series is so foundationally set that even retconning the origins of the Assassins couldn't erase his memory. He was a man closer to the truth of God than any other, and yet he chose to walk the path of a man to improve the lives of other men. We thought it only appropriate to discuss the origins now that AC1 has turned 15. So without further ado, this is Altair Ibn-La'Ahad's origins explored. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you liked our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. He was born into the order and raised as an assassin, Altair's childhood and early years. The Nizari Ismailis were a unique branch of Islam in that their main doctrine was that of jihad, or the acceptance of social justice, and dispensing equal treatment to all human beings despite their religious, cultural, racial, or ethnic differences. This fact can be seen at play in Altair Ibn-La'Ahad's parentage. His mother was a Christian woman named Maud, and his father was a legendary Muslim assassin whose name was Umar ibn La'Ahad. Altair's name is a unique one in that its translation betrays tradition. Instead of being patronymic, it appears as though Ibn La'Ahad serves as his surname. Altair Ibn La'Ahad translates to the bird son of no one. Whereas, if his name were to follow the Arabic naming tradition, he'd be called Altair ibn Umar, with the latter half of his name translating to son of Umar. Incidentally, he uses his denomination to refer to himself during a Templar attack on Masayef, but that comes much later, for this was one bird whose birth came with as much joy as it did grief. Maud passed away giving birth to Altair, and so he was raised by his father Umar in the assassin fortress of Masayef as a single parent. Little is known about Umar ibn La'Ahad's life and times except for two things. One, he raised his son following the Assassin's Creed despite not having him initiated into the order on account of his age. Umar taught his son to value knowledge and keep a skeptical yet accepting mind at all times. Books were something he cherished in particular, and later in life, when Altair witnesses the almost destruction of knowledge within the Holy Lands, he remarks that it would have disgusted his father. The second was his decision to give up his own life. In 1176, when Altair was 11 years old, Sultan Salah ad-Din laid siege to Masayef Castle following two separate attempts at his life in the past 2 years perpetrated by the assassins. Al-Mualim and his closest advisors gathered for a meeting to discuss how best to deal with the Saracen threat, and the mentor of the Assassin Brotherhood decided that they would intimidate the Sultan instead of outright killing him. He reasoned that if they were able to show Salah ad-Din just how truly helpless he was to one assassin's blade despite his massive army, he would leave them alone. His rationale was proven true, but at the cost of Umar's life. The master assassin was tasked with carrying out this dangerous mission, and though he successfully infiltrated Salah ad-Din's tent and planted the message, he wasn't able to get away unseen and was forced to kill a Saracen nobleman to save himself. After receiving the message from the assassins, the Sultan left Masayef the next day and even agreed to an alliance of sorts with them, an eye for an eye, life for life. He demanded Umar's as repayment for the loss of his general. Al-Mu'allim rejected this offer when Salahuddin's general brought it to him, but was forced to accept it when he realized the Saracens had discovered his spy, Ahmed Sufyan, within their ranks. Umar accepted his fate with honor and died as he had lived, only asking his master for one final favor: to raise his son as a novice of the assassin order and to take care of him. The mentor accepted his student's request and sent him to his fates, but Altair could not accept it. He cried out for his father as Umar made his way to the executioner's block and was only spared the sight of his father's demise when Ahmed Sufyan, the released spy, turned his gaze away from it. Feeling immense guilt at having been the reason for his comrade's death, for it essentially violated the third tenet of the Assassin's Creed, Ahmed broke into Umar's home and informed his son about the real reason why his father had died. He apologized to Altair for his weakness and repaid his loss with his own blood. This made the young eagle resent Ahmed, but he acted in a far more level-headed manner than anyone his age would. He went straight to Al-Mu'allim with the matter. The mentor of the assassins told the young man not to speak of this to anyone, especially Ahmed's son Abbas, as he gave him another tale to tell instead. Ahmed had fled the order, Al-Mu'allim instructed Altair, so his son may be spared the shame of his acts. Later in his life, Altair would recall that Al-Mu'allim's love had always been weak and dishonest, for he saw the emotion of love itself as a weakness and only gave his favor to those he could use for his own ends. But as a teenager, Al-Mu'allim was the closest thing to a father Altair had, so he did as he was commanded and joined Abbas in training as an assassin. The two boys became close friends as a result of their training and would even sleep in the same bed as if they were brothers, but it was clear from a young age that Altair Ibn-La'Ahad was special. When he would train, it was as if the senses took on another dimension, for his prowess at combat and espionage was next to none. He also embodied the true spirit of a Nizari Fidain, as was evidenced by the fact that Altair did not hesitate whenever he took a leap of faith off a ledge. His ability to see through his enemy's attacks and intentions caused his brothers to remark that the bird possessed an eagle's vision, which is where Altair got the name for his special abilities. See, unbeknownst to him, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad's genes contained Isu DNA within it, which allowed him access to their fabled sixth sense. They called it knowledge, but when it manifested itself within this Crusader-era assassin, it was called eagle vision. Once he realized the power of this sense that allowed him to discern other people's emotions and intentions by just observing them, he perfected it in silence and gave himself an unparalleled tactical edge in all situations. Thereafter, Altair was able to tell friend from foe, mark out objectives and hiding places, and just generally stay multiple steps ahead of the world in all regards. This may be what contributed to his pride when his name became known throughout the Holy Lands, but for now, let's look at how he got there. Losing a friend, experiencing heartbreak, and gaining a lifelong enemy. Altair Ibn-La'Ahad's rise to master assassin. As the years passed, Altair honed his skills and knowledge as if he himself was a scimitar, and as a result all his actions cut deep, from talking to fighting. Altair had always been friends with Abbas, but he had let go of the hatred he felt for Ahmed as he aged, for he saw the tremendous pain Abbas was in because of his father's passing. But it was this pain that he felt for his friend that led him to break the confidence of his mentor for the first time and lose a friend while gaining a lifelong enemy. As they lay in bed one day after training and going through the rigorous paces of the assassin's life, Altair saw Abbas continue to grieve over his father's death and decided he deserves to know the truth. Recall that Abbas had been told that his father had run away from the order because of his shame, so for many long years he held on to the hope that one day he would find his father and bring him back. This hope was shattered by Altair when he told Abbas that Ahmed had committed suicide in front of him because of the guilt he felt for allowing his own father Umar to die at the hands of the Saracens. Abbas took the news with grim silence and simply turned away from this man he had called friend for so long. And the following morning, the dam of emotions that was welling up within him finally broke. He requested their training instructor Labib to arm them with live steel instead of wooden swords, and the lackadaisical master-at-arms agreed. Brandishing his sword, Abbas spewed hatred in Altair's face for the first time and attacked him in a blind rage. Altair tried his best to keep Abbas at bay without spilling his blood, but the latter would not stop calling him a liar and creating a commotion. Desperate to end the conflict and prevent further dissension, Altair falsely agreed to his accusations, which earned both of them a month's captivity within the dungeons. Because Abbas had instigated the incident, he was forced to spend another year in training, whereas Altair was raised to the rank of assassin. From this point onwards, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad became the most favoured child of Al-Mu'allim, gaining his favours thanks to his own powers and skill. He executed his missions with deadly precision and was loved little for it by his foes and even some of his friends, who began marking his increased arrogance in the face of success. Meanwhile, Abbas began harbouring a grudge towards his former friend, which would poison his heart and mind and cause him to do unspeakable things in the twilight of his life, but that is for later on in the video. Altair was away on a mission in 1189 when he received word of an attack on Masyaf by the Templars, thanks to a turncoat named Haras. He rushed to his home on horseback and immediately took charge of the situation, despite Al-Mu'allim having been taken hostage. As soon as he arrived, he saved one of his brothers, who remarked that Altair was just like his father Umar, but was beckoned to retreat by his former friend Abbas Sufyan. Abbas argued that with Al-Mu'allim taken, they had no other choice, but Altair had other plans. He told Abbas that upon his signal, he was to flank the Templars and drive them all into the canyons adjoining Masyaf Castle, and that he wanted no mistakes. Altair then confronted the traitor, who openly prided himself on his betrayal and made cryptic comments about the true allegiance of his mentor. Altair informed Haras that he was marked for death and began infiltrating the assassin fortress to save his father figure. As Altair made his way to Haras, the latter kept executing his former assassin brothers and taunting Al-Mu'allim with their deaths, all the while inquiring about a mysterious artifact. Altair was able to sneak up above Haras and execute him with a daring aerial assassination. He gave Haras the chance to salvage his dignity in his dying moments, but the man refused. Al-Mu'allim remarked upon this, to which Altair replied that every person had the right to know kindness in death, even traitors. The mentor told his best protege it filled him with pride and sadness to have seen him grow up so fast, and that he filled his father's shoes as if they were tailored to his feet. For driving away the Templar Crusaders and saving the mentor and thereby the assassin order almost single-handedly, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad was raised to the rank of a master assassin and officially included in Al-Mu'allim's inner circle of advisors. When Abbas heard of this, he was furious, though to be completely fair to Altair, he wasn't responsible for another man's incompetency or jealousy. Abbas spat at Altair's feet when he learnt of his promotion, and the newly made master assassin only sneered in response, making this the first public display of the arrogance that would come to define his first few years as a master assassin. After Masyaf was attacked so brazenly by the Templars, Al-Mu'allim decided to temporarily relocate the assassins to the city of Aleppo, which is where the game Assassin's Creed Altair's Chronicles picks up. In 1190 AD, Altair is returning from his latest journey to Aleppo, where he finds a nearby village under attack by the Templars. A dying assassin guard hands him his own sword and asks him to avenge the fallen, which Altair does with ruthless efficiency. A Templar archer reveals to him that the Grand Master of the Order, Lord Basilic, was looking for information that the Brotherhood held and would not stop until he had it. Altair put him down and then proceeded to clear out every Templar in the village, killing their captain and putting an end to their atrocities. He was then instructed by Al-Mu'allim to recover an artifact called the chalice, which purportedly had the mystical power to unite the warring factions under a single leader and end the conflict once and for all, achieving true peace. With his mission in his hands, Altair set out for Damascus first, then Tyre and Jerusalem. His journey saw him recover keys to open up the Temple of the Sand that allegedly housed the chalice. But his methods laid bare the arrogance that had started developing within him. In Damascus, he openly stated the assassin password to the local Rafik, instead of doing so discreetly, for which he was admonished and made to prove his worth as an assassin. In Jerusalem, he was tempted by the Templar master of the tower to join their order, after having noted the choice methods that Altair adopted to dispatch his enemies. Although he would reject this proposal and never join the Templar cause, his haughtiness ended up costing him something more precious than the only life he had known. When Altair arrived at the Temple of the Sand to confront Lord Basilic, he realized that the chalice was not an object but a person. He chased Basilic to Tyre and fought him twice there, sparing him only because he offered to give up the location of the chalice. But the Grand Master also told the Master Assassin of a most devious Templar plot to win the siege of Acre, thereby dividing his priorities and hoping to stall for time. Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad responded by burning all Templar ships at Tyre and riding for Acre, swiftly putting down the Templar plot before arriving at Don Caravaggio's villa in Jerusalem to acquire the chalice. To his shock, it was someone he had not only knew but loved. It was a woman named Adha. Altair was able to rescue her from her captors and convince her to trust him despite her apprehension of assassins, and it soon became clear why that was the case in the first place. Harash, Al-Mualim's second-in-command at Aleppo, was secretly working with the Templars and was the one who had captured her in the first place. Altair admitted that he could not believe her claim or prove it until he had some evidence in favor of it, but suggested to Adha that they should just run away, disappear and lead a normal life together. She agreed with him, but would only go on the condition that he killed Harash to secure her own life. Altair departed at once to take care of the traitor, knowing he would most likely be expelled from the Assassin Order for treason because of his acts. But he didn't care. He had fought for too long and for too little. He wanted to run away with Adha as soon as he could, but it was not to be. When he returned to Tyre, an army stood between him and his beloved, who had been put on a ship by Lord Basilic. Altair Ibn-La'Ahad cut a bloody path to him and finally slew the Templar Grand Master, but he wasn't able to rescue Adha once again. The Templars sent a fire ship to destroy the one that Altair was battling Basilic on, and even though he pursued them as quickly as was possible for him, it was too little, too late. Adha had been executed by the Templars. Altair cradled her lifeless body in his arms and swore to hunt down every man involved in her death as retribution. He achieved his goal, but he could not find any peace in it. A year later, during his quest through the Holy Land, a fellow assassin brother in Damascus asked Altair what had become of Adha, but he quickly dropped the topic when the latter didn't respond. On his personal codex, he would remark that he wanted to lay down his blade and start a normal life with her, but her death left him hollow and incapable of love, or so he thought at that time. Adha's death only intensified Altair's hatred for the creed that bound his cause, because when so many of his brothers were ready to turn their cloaks so eagerly, what was the point of following the damn rules? To add insult to injury, he was not reprimanded for executing a brother and fellow assassin without proof, instead being welcomed back with open arms. It is true that Altair personally wanted to elope with Adha and start anew, but if he was going to be stuck as an assassin, he at least expected to receive the same justice that his father got from the Saracens. When that did not happen, he was left with this cynical mindset that whatever he did was justifiable as long as the means achieved the desirable ends. And so he began flouting the creed ever more openly and brazenly, and this is how we met him for the first time in 2007 during the events of the very first Assassin's Creed game. The Quest for the Apple and Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad's Rebirth, Assassin's Creed 1. Disillusioned heavily by the experiences he had had growing up and more recently in his mission for the chalice, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad began thinking of himself above the creed, and it showed in his behavior. In 1191, the Holy Lands were being torn apart by the Third Crusade. Richard the Lionheart and Sultan Salah ad-Din were locked in a struggle to see who got control of the most hotly contested region in human history, but their immediate subordinates were working towards a far grander and more sinister goal. Chief among them was Robert, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, who was said to be looking for a treasure of immeasurable value in Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. Altair was tasked by Al-Mualim to ambush the Templar Grand Master and recover whatever he was looking for in there, and sent his brothers Malik and Qadr with him. Altair Ibn-La'Ahad was the youngest master assassin in the history of the Order up until that point, and was something of a living legend following his exploits in the past year. But his cold outlook on life now had the shades of arrogance upon them, and it made a potent recipe for failure. Altair flouted not just one, but all three tenets of the Assassin's Creed during the mission, and ended up failing it because of his hastiness and refusal to adhere to his training. Robert did not even have to make the effort to discover Altair, because he simply revealed himself to the Templar. In the ensuing scuffle, Robert managed to cut off Altair from his brothers, ensuring that the treasure and the lives of the assassins remained in his hands, causing the Master Assassin to return to Masyaf empty-handed for the first time in his career. Al-Mualim was rightly outraged by his failure to retreat with his brothers, let alone recover the artifact. But Altair, in his arrogance, simply assumes that both Malik and Qadr died in Solomon's temple. He is proven wrong immediately when Malik walks in, having secured the Templar treasure, and barely escaped with his own life. He lost his brother Qadr and would soon lose his left arm as well, but he had succeeded where the mentors chosen had failed, and that was enough for him now. Malik's actions had the unintended consequence of leaving Masyaf open to Robert's forces, but with the artifact secure, Al-Mualim was ready to face his enemies with no fear. And despite his failures, Altair played a central role in his plans. While the mentor of the assassins put on a display of strength and devotion to the Crusaders by commanding his disciples to go with God and take a leap of faith, in reality, he was sending them to activate the defensive measures of Masyaf Castle. Altair dislodged rocks and logs that crashed through the Crusader forces and sent them retreating from Masyaf. But his success here does not redeem him the way he thought it would. Altair must have assumed it would be like it had been last year, when his killing of Al-Mualim's second-in-command did not even draw so much as the bat of an eyelash from his peers. Instead, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad was humbled by the very man he once thought of as his father. Al-Mualim reminded Altair of all his failures in Jerusalem, of the fact that not only did he kill an innocent man, but his actions also brought their sworn enemies to their doorstep and endangered the lives of all assassins at Masyaf. Altair's actions directly led to Qadr's death, and indirectly led to the deaths of many assassins and villagers from Masyaf. The mentor accused his star student of treason, saying that his actions betrayed his words, no matter how insistently he claimed to be loyal to the assassin's cause. Raising a golden dagger, he stabbed Altair in the gut, seemingly ending his life. But, as it would turn out, that was an illusion. Al-Mualim told his student that he merely saw what he wanted him to see, and now that the illusion was broken, his redemption began in earnest. He had been stripped of all his weapons and ranks that he held. He was now a novice once more. Altair was going to earn back his rank and weapons by executing 9 men that Al-Mualim had branded as war makers, plague bringers, and corrupting influences on the Holy Land. The mentor claimed that by killing them, Altair would not only redeem himself, but also bring true peace to the Holy Land. But right after he took down his first mark, the now novice assassin began questioning his master. When he took down Tamir, a black market arms dealer in Damascus who was selling weapons to both Crusaders and Saracens, his target told him that he was part of a larger cause that had nothing to do with the crusade itself. In Acre, Garnier de Naples, the mad doctor of the Knights Hospitaller, exhibited a similar unwavering faith in his work, where he basically performed human experimentation on forced subjects under the pretext of saving them. In Jerusalem, he murdered Talal, a slave trader who was weirdly enough collecting all the whores, beggars, addicts and other societal dregs for his unnamed brothers, and all this information began to weigh heavily on Altair's mind. Al-Mualim did not help things either, for all he gave his disgraced student were cryptic riddles and half-answers, instead of helping him the way a proper mentor should. His next 3 targets were far more high-ranking than common criminals and a crazy doctor. William of Montferrat came from a noble house with a long lineage, and had recently been appointed regent of Acre by King Richard himself. Majd ad-Din was the self-appointed regent ruling Jerusalem in the stead of Sultan Salah ad-Din. Nabu al-Nukud was the wealthiest man in Damascus and was often called the Merchant King for his immense influence within Salah ad-Din's court. Yet all 3 of them, in their dying moments, professed to be working not for their leaders, but for an entirely separate cause. Altair Ibn-La'Ahad realized that all his targets were connected, and whatever they were going to do was going to be massive for the Holy Land. The mentor's words implied that the intentions of their enemies were going to be catastrophic for the people. but to hear them tell it, Altair was the evil one. They constantly spoke of bringing people together, trying to achieve peace, following orders, and trying to create a new world, just like the struggle that the assassins were faced with. Altair finally demanded answers from Al-Mualim and was told the big secret of his mission. Every man he was killing was a Templar working for Robert. The artifact that he was sent to recover was something known as a Piece of Eden, a powerful weapon that could enslave people to the will of whoever wielded it. Al-Mualim beckoned his student to take a closer look and explained that this was the root cause of the Crusades, not the holy conquest of Richard the Lionheart. Robert and his allies wanted this weapon to enslave the population of the Holy Lands and turn them into a docile and pliable army that they could then deploy however they wanted, no questions asked. Altair realized that every man he had killed so far was basically preparing this army for the new world when the dots were connected for him and was filled with a renewed understanding of his mission and his own creed. The arrogance and brashness of his youth now disappeared, being replaced instead by resolve and something that one might even call faith. But his final 3 targets threatened to dissolve all the progress once again because in killing Sibrand, Grand Master of the Knights Teutonic, Jubair al-Hakim, a scholar close to Salahuddin and Robert, the Grand Master of the entire Templar Order, he discovered the truth about his own master, that Al-Mualim was a traitor and likely had been one for years. Robert revealed this truth with his dying breath, and his comrades all but said it with theirs as well. Altair had caught on to the fact that something was wrong with what his mentor was telling him, and what the truth was when he was sent to dispatch Robert, because Al-Mualim said something rather uncharacteristic back then. Up until that point, Al-Mualim had insisted that Robert the Templar's goal was the conquest of the Holy Lands for their own order, and the establishment of an effective slave state in its aftermath. He hammered this down Altair's throat for 8 assassinations, but when the time came to kill Robert, he changed his tune and said that actually Robert and the assassins fought for the same thing. It was only their methodology that differed. In hindsight, Altair should have known then and there that his master had betrayed him, but hindsight is 2020 after all, isn't it? When he arrived in Jerusalem to assassinate Robert, he instead found a woman named Maria Thorpe, who was posing as the Templar Grand Master. Altair spared her life after learning Robert's location and his purpose, and implored Malik to find more clues about the actual truth of their enemy's purpose. Malik revisited Solomon's temple in his search and found Robert's journal, which had the written proof of Al-Mualim's betrayal. The 2 assassins converged on Masayef separately and joined up to free their brothers and their villagers from the mental enslavement of the Piece of Eden. Altair charged Malik with clearing the village and assaulted the fortress from the back as he went in from the front to challenge his so-called father. Al-Mualim's true colours were bitter and boastful. He berated Altair for his overly curious nature, for it had led to his own undoing. But he also begrudgingly praised his resistance to the Piece of Eden's magic. Apparently, he had tried to use it on Altair to enslave him to his will, but was unable to do so. This could have happened when the mentor beckoned his student to take a closer look at his shiny loot, or on the way back when he stabbed Altair with a golden knife, because that vision's description is closer to the reported effects of the apple. Altair engaged Al-Mualim in a battle to the death, fighting off 2 waves of phantoms and enslaved brothers in disguise before facing the traitor himself. After a drawn-out battle, which he only survived thanks to his eagle vision, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad stabbed his mentor to death and put his schemes and lies to an end. In his final moments, Al-Mualim urged his student to seize the power of the apple, and his voice could be heard tempting Altair to do the same when the Piece of Eden started randomly projecting a map of the world. But in the face of his rebirth and reaffirmation to the Assassin's Creed, and thanks to the Isu DNA he carried in his genes, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad was not bewitched by what Al-Mualim had once labelled temptation personified. Instead, he turned his focus to putting the weapon to good use so that the assassins might prosper. And it was here that his past caught up with him and brought his life to a very harsh full-circle moment. But not before Altair experienced love once again. His love, his life, his triumphs and his tragedies. The later life of the new mentor. In the immediate aftermath of his killing of Al-Mu'allim, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad faced his first great challenge as the new prospective mentor of the Assassin Order, in the form of his old adversary. To ensure that his former master was truly dead and that it was not another illusion cast by the apple, Altair decided to burn Al-Mu'allim's body on a pyre. But this went against every funeral custom of the Muslim faith. And though the Brotherhood respected all religions equally, that also entailed respecting their burial rites or lack thereof. After lighting his former master's pyre for all eyes in Masyaf to see, he was angrily confronted by Abbas, who accused him of usurping Al-Mu'allim's post out of sheer selfishness. Altair tried to plead his case and explain the dangers of the apple, but Abbas was still wearing his blindfold of jealousy and rage. His words instigated many other faithful assassins to attack their brother in light of his heresy, while he took possession of the apple in the ensuing chaos. Abbas fled with the Piece of Eden to the top of a siege tower and was enamored by its power. But it was soon made clear that he wasn't the right man to wield it, for the apple started enslaving and/or hurting all assassins in his vicinity without discrimination. It was only when Altair managed to reclaim the artifact from a down and weakened Abbas that the nightmarish effects of the apple were stopped and the latter apologized for his ignorance. Altair stared intently into the artifact and asked it if it had anything to teach the assassins or it would lead them all to ruin. The answer, to his utter dismay, would be both. The first few months of Altair's possession of the apple took a heavy toll on his mind. He was fascinated with its functioning and the processes by which it took control of the minds of other men, but he was also wary of its power, for it was in fact temptation given form after a fashion. Through his extended use of the apple, Altair was able to deeply reflect upon the Assassin's Creed and concluded that his order needed to change. In the real world, Nizari Ismaili assassins were bold creatures who preferred public executions and acts of defiance that could only be labelled as crazy. Legends state that an assassin would not flee at the sight of his assassination until they were discovered to make a psychological statement. That, even if you find them red-handed, you are powerless to stop their acts or catch them in it. The 9 fortresses in the coastal mountain range of Syria that they built were tangible and visible symbols of their power, but the encounter with Robert and his Templars had made both sides wary. The Templars were already retreating deep into the shadows, and tracking them was becoming harder by the day. Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad decided that to ensure the survival of his brotherhood, they must change too. He stopped the ritualistic sacrifice of the ring finger of the left hand, a symbol of an assassin's commitment to their cause, believing it to be a symbol of a false paradise instead. He redesigned the hidden blade so it wouldn't require a finger sacrifice for usage, and lifted the ban on using poisons, even creating a new delivery system that involved the assassin's trademark weapon. In conjunction with his right-hand man Malik, Altair devised newer and more discreet methods of assassination and reprogrammed his order's ideologies to favor hiding in plain sight and guerrilla warfare far more. After gaining the loyalty of all his assassin brethren with words instead of using the apple, and proving his worth as a strong leader, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad faced his first test as the new Al-Mu'allim when he departed Masyaf for the Kingdom of Cyprus. A month after his reorganization of the assassins under his own leadership, Altair received word that the remaining Templars in the Holy Lands were regrouping in Acre's harbour. The new mentor concluded that he should attack the harbour with a group of assassins to end the Templar menace once and for all. But when they arrived, their targets had already left. Altair began investigating the area for clues as to their destination when he came upon the same woman who had inadvertently helped him save his brothers from his traitorous mentor, Maria Thorpe. Apparently, she had fallen out of favour with the Templars after Robert's death and had been abandoned at Acre by the new leader of their forces, Armand Bouchard. Altair approached Maria after the guards left her wanting to speak with her, but the woman attacked him. So he defeated her in single combat and took her hostage, making her travel to Cyprus with him after temporarily abdicating leadership of the order, remarking that he built this brotherhood to last. Arriving in Limassol, the new mentor learned of the Templar archive and Armand Bouchard's desire to take control of it. The King of Cyprus had always been a Templar, but his grandiose plans of being a military genius gave him the notion that he could win a war against Richard the Lionheart. After being defeated, he nearly exposed the Templar library to the world. But his failures were covered up by Armand and the rest of the Templars, who outright bought Cyprus from Richard. His original intention was the defense of the Templar archive on Cyprus and to try to re-establish their mission in the Holy Lands. But that was thrown to the winds when Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad joined the Cypriot resistance against him. Maria Thorpe escaped Altair's captivity on at least 2 separate occasions and was captured by her detractors once, but these absences from his company only served to drive her closer into his arms. Initially, she was extremely eager to run to the Templar Order and see it restored to the glory it experienced under Robert. But she was not blind to his exploitation of her either, and when Armand Bouchard refused to cooperate with her despite getting a life-saving warning from her, she began to rethink her allegiances. During a conversation on board a ship, Altair and Maria have a conversation about their earlier lives and the philosophies that guide them, but the assassin is unable to convert the Templar over to his cause. He only succeeds once he puts his life on the line to protect her, even after she threatened to kill him should he interfere with her business again. Altair and Maria are led by Bouchard on a wild goose chase, which culminates with her mentor being forced to use the apple on the people of Cyprus after he was framed for killing their resistance leader, Alexander. After finally cornering Armand within the Templar archive beneath Limassol Castle, Altair realizes his mission had already failed. The Templars had used his pursuit of Armand to clear out their archive of hidden knowledge and artifacts, and the only victory to be found in that dreary place for the assassins was Armand's head. The Templar Grandmaster fought a former comrade first, as Maria Thorpe took him on with Altair watching the fight closely. But after he knocked her out, the mentor took over and proceeded to kill his second Templar Grandmaster. After Armand's death, Maria announced her retirement from the Templar Order and confessed to Altair that she wanted to travel as far east as she could. Altair told her that curiosity ruined him and he would love to join her on her journeys despite his duties in Masyaf. The pair decided to travel together to the latter destination instead, seeing as they had fallen in love with one another and were married in Limassol in 1995 by their closest Cypriot ally Marcos. Upon returning to Masyaf, Maria gave birth to her and Altair's first child, Darim Ibn-La'Ahad. After his son's birth, the mentor encouraged his order to shun their old practices of stoicism and embrace the love they bore for their children and families, for he believed that the love would make them stronger than they had ever been. In Assassin's Creed 2, as a result of the bleeding effect, Desmond Miles bears witness to a memory of Altair's, whilst outside of the Animus, in which he follows Maria up a tower in Acre. The couple make love and Desmond's POV shifts from Altair's to Maria's womb, indicating the conception of their second son, Seth ibn La'ahad. For the next 20 years or so, Altair led the assassins peacefully as one of its greatest leaders of all time, though there were pockets of resistance against his leadership, especially one led by his longtime nemesis Abbas Sofyan. Abbas did not agree with Altair's marriage to Maria, a foreigner and a former Templar besides. He had also not forgotten the perceived ills that Altair had committed against his father's memory. The hatred that had stewed within Abbas his entire life overflew once Altair had left Masyaf for an extended period and culminated in yet another betrayal of his trust and confidence. When Altair was at Masyaf, he dedicated his time to rebuilding and expanding the influence of the assassins, establishing new guilds wherever he went, and usually succeeded, except for when he tried to make one in Constantinople in 1204 AD. Using the knowledge he had acquired from the apple, he was able to create armor from a metal so light it felt like fabric, yet so durable that it could break steel. He also made several other innovations and observations that contained deep philosophical meaning once understood, thanks to his interactions with the apple, all of which he recorded in his codex. But it was clear that his control was slipping. During the initial acquaintance, Maria accepted Altair's rejection of giving up the apple as a sort of a necessary evil, and would even inquire as to what he saw within it regarding the future of their family. But as the years progressed, she began urging him to put it away instead, and then outright told him it was driving him crazy. Altair had once believed that using the apple in small doses with a sharp mind could unlock so many secrets that the world needed that its continued use would be justified. But he had begun slipping, and if Maria hadn't caught him, he'd be lost completely. In the year 1218 AD, the mentor of the Assassin Order set out to accomplish perhaps his life's greatest task. He wished to stop the advance of the ravenous Mongol horde. Taking his wife and his eldest son Darim with him, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad travelled to the lands of Mongolia, where he liaised with the assassin Kulan Gal in preparation for the assassination of the greatest conqueror in world history, Genghis Khan. For 10 years he was gone from his home, trying to kill an enemy he thought had yet another piece of Eden. Altair was right in his deductions, of course. Genghis Khan was using the Sword of Eden to achieve his ungodly military victories, and Altair had an idea as to how they could stop him from spreading his tyranny the world over while ensuring the peace of Eden did not cause any more trouble. He told Maria and Darim to set themselves up at a vantage point as he and Kulan Gal, disguised, tried to flush out the Khan himself. They would have been successful too had Altair been a little younger. But alas, age does not lend itself to espionage and subterfuge, and the two assassins were discovered. They managed to make their escape and accomplished their original objective regardless, for Genghis Khan did come out of his siege camp near Jinping after the assassins set fire to his tent. Altair's team wasted no time. Kulan Gal immediately chased down Genghis Khan and shot down his horse with an arrow, whilst Altair's son Darim shot the conqueror dead with his crossbow. With the biggest threat to the assassins' expansion in the east now laid to rest, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad and his family returned home after a decade of being absent to find it a husk of its former self. Assassins lounged about Masyaf as if they had no purpose anymore, and those that did not move looked more like bandits than brothers. Altair and Maria are greeted by Swami, not Rauf, as they had requested, and this is where, once again, the mentor's suspicions should have been aroused once more. Everyone they met is either ashamed to meet their gaze or too brazenly doing it. Swami does not take them to the Master's Tower, where Altair is supposed to reside, but to a smaller room in Masyaf Castle, and when asked about Sef, Swami replies that their second son went to Alamut, and the assigned leader Malik had been imprisoned for treason. In Altair's absence, a council had been formed to decide the fate of the Assassin Order with Abbas Sufyan at its head. And so it was that while he went to neutralize the greatest threat his order would ever face, his oldest enemy filled the vacuum his absence had generated. Not trusting the situation, Altair sent Darim to Alamut to check on Sef and went to comfort Abbas, only to learn that Sef was dead. To hear Abbas tell it was Malik's doing. The man Altair had appointed as his successor allegedly tried to take control of his order by taking out his son, but now that Abbas was in charge, no such treachery was going to take place. Altair demanded that the leadership of the order is restored to him, but Abbas's manipulated council put their entire weight behind him. Their pleas were rejected. Altair and Maria decided to find out the truth for themselves before confronting Abbas again. Altair had almost believed Abbas's lies, but Maria reminded him that the apple was making him see possibilities that did not exist. Both of them knew Abbas was lying, so they broke Malik out of prison and nursed him until he revealed the real truth. Abbas had staged a coup and destroyed everything Altair had spent his life building. Determined to destroy the man he should have expelled decades ago, the only reason Altair did not do as he had vowed was because of his wife, who told him that he needed to destroy Abbas, not in service of vengeance, but the Assassin's Creed. When the couple confronted Abbas, they were promised answers in exchange for the Apple of Eden. Altair surprisingly agreed to it without hesitation, where he had previously refused to stop using it despite his wife requesting otherwise. But it seemed as though Sef's death had completely broken him. Just as he was about to hand over the artifact, Swami decided to be a smartass and ruined everything for his own master. He told Altair that he killed Sef after telling him that Altair himself had given the order, which turned his grief into rage. He activated the apple and used it to make Swami commit suicide. But in the ensuing scuffle, Maria was mortally wounded. With her dying breath, she pleaded with her husband to be strong. For a moment, Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad contemplated ending it all using the apple's power, but he realized that wasn't the kind of strength his Maria was talking about. He escaped from Masyaf with Darim, who arrived just in the nick of time, and relocated to Alamut, where he stayed for nearly 2 decades, drowning in sorrow, grief and bitterness over the accursed apple that had cost him his family. But one can only grieve for so long, and after spending years on end with his grief, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad had only space for progress and knowledge remaining in his life. He started using the Apple of Eden once again, and used it to devise new medicines and a brand new projectile-based attachment for the hidden blade, which effectively became the first gun ever to be created in the lore of the AC franchise. At the age of 82, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad returned to Masyaf Castle and took charge of his order once again, though this time the only blood spilt was that of his old friend turned traitor. Abbas Sufyan died, still believing that he had been right and that his father would finally set him free with the truth when they met in the afterlife. But all we know that Altair had been telling him the truth all along. After staging his own bloodless coup of Abbas's council, Altair set about restoring the assassins to their former glory and inadvertently setting the stage for the second great catastrophe of 2012. Final years and the legacy of Altair Ibn-La'Ahad. In the decade between his retaking of the mantle of mentor and his passing, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad once again transformed the assassin order. No longer would they be bound to one location, visible to all their enemies and open to attack at all times. Altair's brothers would spread around the world and establish brotherhoods and guilds in every major stronghold of power in the hopes that true peace can be achieved one day. This was done in part due to the approaching Mongol horde, yes, but also after experiencing the many traumas that Al-Mualim and then Abbas's leadership had inflicted upon his brothers. In the 20 years that he was away from Masyaf and isolated in Alamut Castle, Altair managed to discover a secret first civilization temple underneath the latter, which contained precursor artifacts called memory seals. He took possession of several of these, but only ever used 6 of them. 5 of these he would hand over to Niccolo Polo, brother of Maffeo Polo and the father of the legendary traveller and explorer Marco Polo. Also an assassin initiate and the founder of the Constantinople Guild of Assassins. The final one he kept with himself for a reason. Altair built a massive library under Masyaf and stored books with the knowledge he had gathered from the Apple of Eden over there. But by the time the Mongols had besieged the castle, all of them were in faraway places, safe from the fires of the horde. He escorted Niccolo and Maffeo to the gates of Masyaf, wielding the Apple of Eden to keep the Mongol invaders at bay. Once there, he asked them to hide the seals in such a manner that only an assassin would be able to find them, and he also entrusted the Polos with his codex, which contained invaluable information about the world that was, the world before, and the world to come. After ensuring that Masyaf Castle had been evacuated entirely, Altair said his final goodbye to his son Darim and locked himself within his library, which was revealed to be a vault as well as a final resting place for the man himself. He put his Apple of Eden upon a pedestal and recorded his final memory onto the 6th seal before passing away at the age of 92. He died knowing the peace he thought he would never know in his youth, and with his passing went one of the greatest assassin leaders and philosophers of his age. Altair Ibn-La'Ahad had lived a life much longer than most of his peers, seen much more, and yet managed to mostly stay true to the creed of the order he was born into. He went from a brash hothead to being one of the most important figures in the history of the Assassin Order, and there is a reason that his robes are included in every AC game. It's because it's a tradition. In his lifetime, he slew many leaders who have counterparts in real life, including no less than 2 actual Knights Templars, Robert D. Sable and Armand Bouchard, while masterminding the assassination of the greatest Mongol Khan to have ever lived. He loved twice, had 2 sons, and became a mentor of the assassins twice, but it must have been his greatest regret that he could not continue his work over 2 lifetimes. His legacy is so solidified within the AC community that no matter how hard Ubisoft tries to run the franchise into the ground, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad will never not be iconic. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the testament of a legendary video game character. Happy 15th anniversary Assassin's Creed 1, and here's hoping you don't mess it up with the release of Mirage next year. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.